order for December 15th, 2021, and the time is 7:02 p.m. This meeting is being held remotely as an alternate means of public access pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, temporarily amending certain provisions of the open meeting law. You are hereby advised that this meeting and all communications during this meeting may be recorded by the town of Hingham in accordance with the open meeting law. If any participant wishes to record this meeting, please notify the chair at the start of the meeting in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20F, so that the chair may inform all other participants of said recording. Is anyone else recording the meeting this evening? Okay, hearing no one. Next on the agenda, are there any comments from the public regarding items not on the agenda? Hearing no one. So next we have a review and the approval of minutes from December 7th, 2021.
Julie?
Yeah.
Oops. I actually would like to defer those to the next meeting as I received some substantial changes at the end of the day today. So I'd like to incorporate those and have everyone be able to look at them. I apologize.
Okay. No, that's fine. We coming up when we start meeting more regularly in January and then a lot more regularly in February, when Nancy cranks out those minutes, if you can try to review them as soon as possible to get them back to Nancy so we can stay on top of the editing process and so we can keep on top of approving them, that would be great. Thank you. Okay, so next we have budget hearings for this evening, and we're going to start with OPEB.
That's me.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to wait for that to pull up.
Can you see what I'm showing?
It's the agenda. You can see.
Oh, okay, hold on. Hold on. I had this all set up.
I think you have to stop sharing and then share
There we
again.
go. Is it showing now?
No, just the agenda.
still
You
the
have to
agenda.
stop sharing and then now share and then. There you go.
Okay.
Brilliant.
So this is the budget for the other post-employment benefits. This is again done by KMS, the actuary, and it's a straightforward calculation. This will be fully funded in 2040. And the amount this year is for $1,289,173, which is up 1.7%. This includes health insurance for retirees.
It's actually a formula for past retirees and future retirees. And what it does is we put it into a trust, and it is from KMS. It's an actuarial evaluation report that we get, and they give us a schedule, and it is straight off that schedule. And in 2040, starting in 2040, all retirement health insurance will come out of the trust instead of this line item. And you will see above that group insurance, that will be about cut in half. So in 2040, you'll see a dramatic decrease in group insurance and OPEB.
So I'll take your word on that one.
So Sue, did you mention though at our last meeting, maybe not, but that it would be fully funded by 2035, is that correct?
That's
That was
retirement.
the other one. Sorry.
The other
What-
one.
Nope, that's retirement. OPEB is
Retirement.
2040.
2040, okay, got it. And is the trust have anything else that would pay out from besides the insurance, health
Nope.
insurance?
That's what it's set up for.
Just
So,
health
yeah.
insurance. Okay. Does anyone have any questions? Sue, can you take a second to explain maybe about how the town of Hingham started to actually pay into this fund?
Oh, we started funding in, I believe it was 2008. And we are one of the very few communities that are over we're about 65 to 70% funded. Most communities only pay a little bit. Some communities haven't even started. So the rating agencies look very, very highly on the town of Hingham's OPEB trust fund.
And when we started, do you think that we were paying roughly the same amount in that table, or are we going up, or are we going
Well,
down? Or
we go up because every few years the mortality tables change. Of course, we did go down quite a bit once we went from Mayflower to the GIC because the town saved quite a bit on group insurance. So it's kind of a roller coaster.
Pandemic should help, huh?
Pardon me? What should help?
no, just we'll move
Oh.
on. We don't need that dark humor from Andy.
Andy. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, back to Kristen for
Yep.
a recommendation.
I recommend for other post-employment benefits expenses in the amount of $1,289,173.
All right, great. Thank you, Kristen. So next up, we have the reserve fund. And I think that's Caitlin.
No,
No?
I think I have this, don't I?
Okay.
The request is $709,291, which is a 6.7% increase. This number is established by the financial policy as 0.75% of the operating budget. The numbers in the first two columns are zeros because this account always zeroes out. Either the money is used for reserve fund transfers or it goes to fund balance. So
Can you give some examples of the perennial budgets that need to dip into the reserve fund?
I would defer to Ms. Nickerson.
Oh, well, we have snow and ice and legal are our top two.
Okay, does anyone have any questions?
Andy, what was the percentage you said before?
0.75. Oh,
6.7? Is that right, Sue?
the increase, yes.
And wasn't there a different percentage you said?
Yes, it's 0.75% of operating budget.
Okay, thank you.
That's what determines the amount of the request. The 6.7 is the increase from last year's request to this year's request.
Does anyone else have any questions about the reserve fund? Okay, hearing none. Andy, so do you have a recommended?
I recommend that we fund the reserve fund budget at the requested amount of $709,291.
All right, great. Thanks, Andy. So next up, we have the health department.
Me? I'd like can't see. Anyway, this is Brenda speaking. I'd like to introduce Susan Sarney, our Executive Health Officer for Hingham. And this is her budget for FY23. She's requesting salaries of $368,201. That is a 4.8% increase. And in terms of expenses, they have a new vehicle that has been ordered based on money appropriated last year, which is apparently due to arrive in the near future. But one of the reasons that fuel costs are up this year is because staff have been having to use their own vehicles because the other one was so unreliable and kept breaking down. So staff are being reimbursed for mileage at this point.
Nancy, can you scroll down a tiny bit? Excellent, thank you.
Okay, yep. Otherwise, stationery supplies and postage are up because the health department attempted to communicate with people about their permits via email, and that was failing given the number of people who are moving around and needing permits in different places. So they've returned to using snail mail and producing sort of written material being sent out. So that's why postage is up. Susan and her sanitarian are both required by law to have regular updates of their training. So therefore, meeting seminars and state travel have resumed for them. So those are up slightly, or actually stayed the same over this coming year. The other expenses are staying fairly close to the same. She does have a request, which will be considered later, for increasing the number of doses of vaccine that they can buy and therefore administer in their clinic. So, Susan, are you available to introduce people to the work of your department?
Sure. Do you need me to share your screen, my screen, or?
Yeah, if you
I made you co-host, Susan, so you can
Okay.
change.
thank you.
How does that? Can you guys see that?
I have those as well. Right, later.
Okay.
I'll just go over quickly what the health department does. We are in charge of prevention in the community through social work, food establishment inspections. We have about 156 food establishments, beach water testing for both public beaches and private, which are the associations over in World's End and over in Crow Point. Communicable disease surveillance. This included COVID last year, and also tobacco control. In terms of permitting, we look at septic system permitting. We have about 65% of the town is on septic systems that need to be permitted and reviewed. Private well construction, we probably have 350 potable and non-potable wells in town. Building permits, local emergency planning, and then in terms of enforcement, we have camps, state sanitary code, foodborne illnesses, housing complaints, hoarding, and things like that. We enforce roughly 16 local and state regulations in our department. Here's a glimpse of what we actually do in terms of permitting and inspections within a year. You can see how many building permits. Those are really on the increase. Wastewater treatment plants are septic systems that have innovative alternative systems. So they have a little more bells and whistles than gravity fed systems. Septic, farmers market, perk tests. We still witness all perk tests for repair systems. So if you are selling your house and your septic system fails in Title V, it's our department that will do that perk test, and that's where the training and those fees come in line. Variances, wells, mobile foods, residential pools, and those are just a few of those permits that we do. Key initiatives, of course, the top of our list, and we're back in it now, is to prevent the spread of COVID-19 in Hingham. I was involved in the command group Last year, we were meeting 7 days a week regarding all the cases with fire and police, Tom and Michelle. We educated the citizens on COVID-19 guidance. We worked a lot with isolation and quarantine instructions within the schools, churches, and all the programs and sports that the kids participate in. We also had to help out all the restaurants and businesses who had COVID cases and work through what that meant for quarantining their personnel, or if they had to close down their business for a short time to work through the isolation of a positive case. Throughout the year last year, there was grants issued just to the health department that helped with my overtime from the Department of Public Health. The board went on to review well regulations last year, and we are happy to say that we found a social worker. In 2020, that position was open, and we just hired one 3 or 4 weeks ago. So this is a glimpse of all the salaries, the full-time and the part-time personnel within the department. And that's my additional request that Brenda said we'll talk about at a later time. I think
We
that's
can
it.
talk about it. We can talk about right now. The advisory committee will debate and talk about all the additional requests later on. But while we have you here, if you wouldn't mind, I mean, it seems pretty self-explanatory, but if you want to go into it a little bit more.
Sure. I have the slide in front of me. We are asking for an additional $9,300 for 200 additional flu vaccines. COVID is free. Flu we still have to pay for. Right now, I have about 100 doses built into my budget on immunization clinics. So that line item's for 100 doses. That's just for the regular strength dose. I think it's like $17, but our seniors really, I call it the high test dose, and that's about $56. So we're asking to purchase additional the high test, 150 doses, and maybe a 50 of the regular doses. So that's what that number equates to. I'm just putting it here as an ask. I am also enrolled in UMass billing, and we did get our check from doing our first booster clinic in January. So what that means is right now I'm enrolled that once anybody registers for a clinic, the software then goes into your, Sue, you might have to help me out with the word conventional insurance, the commercial insurance Hingham is enrolled in. I need to work on getting Medicare and Mass Health enrolled in that UMass billing. So if you have Mass Health or Medicare, then we can actually bill for administering the dose. And that's why CVS and Walgreens are all in this flu business in the last couple of years, because you get to check it back at the end of the year. So I didn't want to promise you that I could get the whole $9,300 because it's our first go around in this. So this is a heavy ask, but I think towards, as we get closer to the clinics for the flu next year, I'll give you guys a better number.
Okay.
Susan, let me just ask you, you explained that it's important for the health department to provide these doses because there's a trust factor that has already been built with seniors in this town.
Mm-hmm. And that's the Board of Health voted 2 years ago to get out of the flu business. We used to do about 500 doses, probably 4 or 5 years ago. They felt that CVS and Walgreens really had the market on that. But now that we've had COVID and we're asked by the state to give the booster clinic, this is a great relationship that we can have with the seniors. We had a good turnout for the booster clinic we did at the Baptist back in January. A lot of towns are also doing the booster of COVID and in conjunction with the flu dose. CDC says you can administer both at the same time. So we're anticipating next year we're going to be having to do booster clinics, and we're going to ask for some additional funding to also administer the flu, and especially that high test flu dose that the seniors really are requesting.
Thank you.
Susan, you had mentioned about trying to get enrolled in the system so that you could get reimbursement potentially if anybody had Mass Health or Medicare.
Mm-hmm.
What are the obstacles for becoming part of that system?
Full confession, I didn't have the time to do it last year, so Michelle and John Asher took that over for some help with me. And they struggled with that piece. I don't know what was missing, but in the last month or so, I've emailed UMass Billing and they've sent me some forms to take a look at for those two missing pieces. I haven't been able to look at it as we're in the surge again of all my COVID, but it's on my plate to be able to get UMass Billing the necessary forms. And I can reach out to John and Michelle to see what necessary documents they have. But it was just, honestly, I didn't have the manpower to do it. And it was a big lift for them to figure out. I guess it's kind of difficult to figure out all that paperwork.
Okay, thank you. Andy, you have a question?
Excuse me, I have three short questions. First, regarding these flus, do you also provide flu shots to town employees, Susan?
Yeah, with the 100 doses that we have downstairs, we offered flu for the town hall. We reached out to the library. As part of the fire department contract, they're required to give flu. We did a couple clinics over there and also police.
Okay. And with regard to the slide of benchmarks and metrics, Board of Health permits and inspections 2020, what, I don't understand, what time frame is that?
I did it for the year of 2020.
The calendar year?
Yeah.
And I'm just stunned. There were 1,700 building permits issued in 2020? Wow.
That's just for us to sign off on, and we don't get them all. The last question I had was I didn't get the under the percentage increases of the salary and expenses.
Salary percent increase was 4.8% and expenses actually is a decrease of 5%.
Thank you.
And just remember that the increases in salary is really not the total increase because the Article 4 money for the new HR Gov has not been posted yet.
I think I understand that until every time you tell me what it is, so I get confused. So is the number for salaries going to be higher than?
No, FY22 revised budget is going to be higher. So the increase from 22 to 23 is not as high as you think it is.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sue, do you know when that will be posted?
There will be no new sheets made for that.
Okay.
So, quick question wait, Andy, are you all set with your questions? Yeah, okay. Sue, quick question about the social worker position and how long was that? You said it was open in 2020. Was the whole calendar year of 2020 that the position was unfilled, or into this whole calendar year? Or anyway, if you can.
Sure. I believe she retired at the end of March of 2020. So it was all until, about a month ago. Let's say I have 4 weeks in with the new social worker.
And did you find that it was difficult because you didn't have a replacement during COVID with the functions that the social worker had done?
Yeah, we had one death of one of the residents that we were working with. I interviewed several times, posted it several times, but as we know, during the pandemic, there's a huge mental health need, and I feel very lucky that we found someone, and she's, excited and reached out to all different sectors within the last month. So hopefully we'll capture anybody that we haven't been working with.
Okay, great. Bob, did you have a question?
No.
Okay. I feel like I have all these questions tonight, sorry. But just one quick question about if you can just give us an update about what you're up to right now with COVID, having any booster clinics or the latest in the efforts to fight COVID.
Okay, cases are on an uptick. I am at probably a 6.4% positivity rate. I've been hovering around 3. I'm trending higher than the state of Massachusetts. This is extremely concerning. This is an uptick because of Thanksgiving that we're seeing. The other problem that all local municipalities in the Commonwealth have is that the state has taken away the contact tracing. So when we weren't able to reach a resident in Hingham, we could turn it over to the state for some assistance. As of the end of November, that program's not available. So I hired a part-time, she's about 10 hours working on the weekends to help us reach out to residents. During the pandemic, we were tasked to reaching all residents that had a positive COVID test. So we were working 7 days a week to reach residents and go over quarantine and guidance. The state, as of last month, told the locals that, hey, we have enough information on COVID. You guys are just to work on school-age children in clusters and nursing homes. So as of this week, I'm working on a piece with the PR company that we hired to get that message out to residents that we're no longer going to be able to call you and go through that. I don't have any staff or any extra personnel to do that. So hopefully this is just what we're seeing because of Thanksgiving. I was able to order 600 doses of the Moderna booster. I have them in my freezer downstairs, and we're going to talk about a small clinic at the Baptist the last Tuesday of the month. And I'm going to work with the fire department on that. Then I have a regional grant of about $300,000 with Cohasset, Hull, Situate, and Hingham that we are going to do some regional work, and COVID's one of them. So we're going to be holding another booster clinic of Moderna 18 and over at the Baptist the first Tuesday of January. Sorry, I don't have a calendar in front of me. I think it's the 4th.
Yeah,
All this will be posted on the website. I have software that they link. That will be linked. You register for your booster. I'll have Jen Young's team's wonderful, and they'll also help seniors who don't have capabilities to register themselves on the computer. Once you register for your booster of 18 and over or Moderna, and the CDC says now you can mix doses, then it will, once you get the vaccine, that software then populates into your medical record at your primary care. So if you lost your card or if you can't have that information and need it to travel, it'll be uploaded into that common software system in Massachusetts. The booster vaccine is available. The state is tasking local departments to, really get some clinics up and running. So that's what we're going to start out with. If I see a huge, I know all of my percentage, I think like 77% of all residents in Hingham are fully vaccinated. I think my kids ages 5 to 11, Hingham residents, we're up at, I could be wrong, like 54% already have 1 dose. We're doing really well with our vaccination data. So we'll run clinics as long as we need to. So I'm going to start off with Moderna and we'll see how it goes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Andy, if you just let Nancy McDonald has her hand up too, and then I'll
Sure,
go to you,
yeah.
Andy. Nancy?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought for a second. Thank you for all the work that you do for the town for this. Can you just tell me what the difference is between the regional clinic and the small clinic that you referenced?
Sure.
In terms of who you're focusing on?
Right now, the end of the month, we're just going to run a clinic for Hingham residents 18 and over that want the booster and see how that goes. We're just I have a meeting with fire and police and everything just to work out the logistics, similar to that booster we did back in January. But then we're going to open it up to the region, and we're going to work with Cohasset. I have vaccines, so I'm gonna work with, the command group, Tom, Michelle, and Art, to see what we want to do, if we want to just do it Hingham, Cohasset, if we want to open it up to the other towns and see how it goes. Supply of the vaccine isn't the issue anymore. I think it's gonna be manpower and working through those administering the vaccine. It's great that we have this big grant, and I also have a meeting with DPH on this regional grant on Thursday.
Andy?
I heard on the radio a report that the state was purchasing a lot of at-home test kits and distributing them in communities particularly hard hit. Would it make any sense for Hingham to have free test kits available at town hall? Or
You guys ask the best questions. I love this group. So the state released yesterday that they spent $10 million on that at-home test, and that's hitting about 100 of the communities who are at the poverty level. Hingham doesn't qualify. The next breath was that there is going to be some reduced cost tests. I'm working with Kathy Riley to see if she sees anything with that. Sue Nicker, I'm going to mess up the words. That state form concubines that you can buy, reduced rates. You guys know what I'm talking about, right?
close enough?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the other thing. Andy, I'm also trying to work with the schools, because I don't want to get all these at-home tests if the schools are going to say, hey, PCR is the gold standard. If you take this at-home swab test that your mom gives you, we really can't use the results. We're going to ask for a PCR test to get back into schools. So I'm going to work with Gary on exactly what they need to get the kids back in schools before we buy anything. This is all in the conversation this week that we're working on.
Thank you.
George?
Thank you, Susan. If memory serves me correct, the state has been holding on to a lot of federal money, and they've recently agreed to some mechanism for doling out some of that money. And I believe that there is money for local departments of health. I know it's really early in the process, but do you have any plans for additional monies that you might receive from the state, or is it really too early to start thinking about that?
I bet you that's why I got that 330 regional grant, and then they just gave me another 60,000 for contact tracing. So their money's not an issue for COVID anymore, and they're just trying to get us to regionalize, because I know the state is looking, pre-COVID, they were really looking at regionalizing services, nursing, social workers. So it makes sense why they're making us do this regional grant for COVID things. That's the only thing I've seen, and I'm on a weekly call with DPH to get more information on funding and resources. But that's all I've heard to date.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Does anyone have any other questions? Thank you for being patient with us, Susan. If not, then Brenda, do you have a recommendation?
I do. I recommend a budget for the health department for FY23 of $368,201 for salaries and $18,862 for expenses. And also a big thank you to Susan for everything that she does on behalf of our town.
Yes, thank you. And thanks for coming to meet with us tonight.
Thank you so much.
Okay, now we are going to hear about elder services.
Okay, so that's me. And Jennifer Young is here. And so our plan is I'll talk a little bit about the budget, and then Jennifer will tell us a little bit more about the work of her department, and then we'll take questions. So that's kind of the plan. This is a levels of services budget. Let's see, we need the budget up there, I guess. Yeah, there you go. So the salaries are $286,334. That's for 3 full-time and 4 part-time employees. It's an increase, although we know that's not real from what Sue has told us, but it's an increase of about $12,778 based on the new wage classification system and one longevity increase. And if I've done the calculations right, which I will take no credit if I have or haven't, it's just under a 4.68% increase in salaries. On the expense side, the only real change is in fuel cost. You might know this already. Gasoline is more expensive. And the department does a lot of transportation services for our town seniors. And so that's the increase. The expenses overall are $26,400. And that's an increase of $1,511, which is just under 6.1%. And again, those expenses are just related to fuel costs. So the total budget, $312,734, an increase of a little over $14,000. The Elder Services Department has 3 special funds. Those of you who've been on for a while know this. There is what's called the Recreation Revolving Fund. That's really the money for programs. It's $80,000 is anticipated to come in, and then basically that goes out. So people are paying a fee for the programs, and then the instructors and expenses are paid out of that. The second fund is the Elder Affairs State Formula Grant, which is $68,820. And the only restriction on how that grant can be used is that it must be used to better the lives of seniors in our community. So, and then the third is a gift account from donations, and that's used for a variety of expenses. You will note the actual expenses in fiscal year 21 were only about $5,000, and that reflects really the impact of COVID and the fact that the transportation services, which are the primary expenses of the department, was somewhat shut down for a while. However, I do want to just point out, in case Jennifer doesn't say this about her staff and herself, they really were instrumental in getting seniors help for getting COVID vaccine appointments, for sharing, and they shared, some of you, in fact, on AdCom are old enough, you probably got these calls as well, giving information and telling you things that you needed to know in terms of getting COVID vaccine and such. So that's what I have. Jennifer will tell us now a little bit about the department and its work, and then we'll have questions.
Okay, thank you, Devlin. Do you want me to screen share, or Nancy, do you have my slides as well?
I do. I can make whatever's easier for you.
That is a lot easier for me. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I gave this budget presentation last week to the Board of Selectmen. I just want to do an audio check to make sure everybody can hear me clearly.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I am working from home, just to follow up on what Sue's been going with. My daughter's daycare teacher tested positive last Saturday, so I've been home with her. So I just wanted to check in on the audio and to let you know there may be some interruptions with both her and her 8-year-old sister. So bear with me. So we operate a full-time senior center dedicated to older adults. One of the things that I want to note when we say we provide a wide variety of programs, this line has been on the slide presentation for several years, and I'd like to add that we now offer in-person, remote, hybrid, and programs on cable as well, all out of necessity and advancements that we've made working through, COVID precautions and not being able to have in-person programming. So this is something that we've learned out of necessity that we plan to continue with in the future. I don't want to ever lose the momentum that we've gained in being able to provide programs to homebound seniors is so very important to us. If you want to go to the next slide. Thank you. Our benchmarks and metrics. If you can look at it, 398 seniors. These statistics were from July 1st through November 10th. We didn't open to the public for programming until the third week in July, and transportation followed that same scenario as well. Initially, as we were collecting data, it was hard to capture the folks that were accessing us remotely when we were funding all of the classes out of our donation account, the funds that we received through our annual appeal. We weren't able to register and track the information as we would normally when folks are registering for programs. We made a lot of progress. We now accept online payments, credit card payments, online registration, and we still, in person is always best. But these numbers are a little bit lower than what we would expect if we were not living in the middle of a pandemic. The transportation program did pick up. As I mentioned back in July, folks were initially resistant to using it because once they were more comfortable with wearing their mask out in public, it was an added concern to get into a vehicle with other people, even though they were also masked. So we're still seeing lower numbers on some of our transportation services, but we did or have rather provided 51 seniors, 374 medical rides. And again, this was just until the beginning of November. We've provided 36 individuals with 552 rides to other places out in the community. So that's grocery shopping, to the senior center, library, and the hair salon's a big favorite as well. Our programming, we've provided 50 in-person programs, which repeated for 1,000 times. So if you take your traditional, Monday strength class, it repeats, let's say Wednesday, Friday. So that's how we come up with those numbers. And we've offered 20 Zoom or hybrid programs, which repeated for 220 events as well. So we've been extremely busy. The pandemic didn't really slow us down. It just changed how we worked. And as I mentioned, we want to keep on with that growth. Our key initiatives, I just want to spend a little time on that. Nancy, if you can go to the next slide. Thank you. We are under contract with UMass Gerontology Institute and I think it's the McCormick School of Policy and Global Studies to conduct a community-wide needs assessment focusing on what the needs and interests are of Hingham seniors. There will be 3,500 surveys that will contain about 45 questions that will go out into the community. It's going to be about a 96.4% split between those over 60, and I wanted to include some younger folks in the survey as well, as we do have a large community of caregivers. So we want to understand what their perception is of what the senior center can do, and maybe what they don't understand that we do. So that study will begin in January of 2022. It will take about 10 months to complete. There will be some small focus groups and interviews, and it will conclude with formal presentations to the public sometime in October of 2022. And the results of that community-wide needs assessment will be built into the design and renovation plans for the expansion of the senior center into the existing footprint of the police department. So if all goes well and public safety vacates the town hall facilities and we can expand back, this needs assessment will be critical in determining how that space will be allocated. The other benefit of working with UMass is that they are the #1 specialist in the in this area performing this service. So they've conducted needs assessments. They're in the process right now of working with Hull. I know that Norwell is next on the list. Several other local communities have utilized their service, so they have all of that data already collected to provide us with comparisons with surrounding and comparable communities, so that we can get a better understanding of how they use their space and put that into our design plans. We are also, the Council on Aging Board is due to review and revise our 5-year strategic plan. That was supposed to happen last year, but with COVID, it didn't make sense to lay out a plan when we didn't know what the future held. So we will use the results again of that community-wide needs assessment to develop our a plan on how to meet the needs that are identified. We are working within the board and with the building committee to discuss rebranding the senior center. I'm sure you've seen, if you haven't, it's been a trend across the state for almost a decade now, where communities are moving away from the traditional term of senior center and adapting, community centers, centers for active living, and really it's a question about, why don't people come in? If we're trying to reach the folks out in the community that don't know who we are, is it because we're using that term senior? We want to give consideration to the fact that it is a title that is earned and proud to be the age of a senior. There's volumes to speak about that, but we want to understand the community's perspective and how they see the senior center moving forward. It actually follows the federal level, where the administration on aging shifted to the administration on community living about 8 or so years ago. The state tends to fall a little bit behind, and some of the communities are a little bit more forward thinking. With looking at rebranding, there becomes this, necessity to create more community awareness and outreach, find who your supporters are, develop some relationships, which in turn would help us with expanding our programming. As mentioned before, we have a relatively small staff of, just a few full-time employees and a couple of part-time employees. So how can we expand our programming if we don't expand our staff? And that really is through building relationships with other businesses, agencies, and organizations out in the community and partnering for that support and leveraging it. So those are just a couple of initiatives we have out in front of us. I feel like it's an exciting time to be involved with the senior center, the Council on Aging, with the building committee. There's a lot of energy between all of us, and it is quite exciting. So where do we go from here? That brings us back to the salaries as the final slide. I do want to mention that our transportation coordinator will be retiring. So there will be some shifts in the salaries moving forward, but I think we have,
Nancy, can you go to our last slide?
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. I talked an awful lot about our initiatives, so. Our salary line is $286,334. We do have the 4 part-time personnel, 1 office assistant that works 12 hours a week, and we have 3 paid driver positions. Their hours fluctuate depending on what the needs of the seniors out in the community are. So sometimes they might drive an hour a day, sometimes it might be a 9-hour day, depending on how many appointments are scheduled. We have 2 transportation program positions with a combined salary of $54,534. Those positions are fully funded through the Executive Office of Elder Affairs State Formula Grant, and that's based on a dollar value set by the state on the number of seniors that live in your community. So we're really waiting for that census data to come out and to see how that's going to impact the formula grant moving forward. We right now have 84 active volunteers. That's down from about 120 in the years previous. It's been a slow return as we are providing a lot of our programming online or hybrid. We do have, a number of folks that are resistant to returning to in-person, and that goes along with our volunteers as well. So we've had about 255 hours served by our volunteers this year compared to fiscal year 19, which was the last really full year that we had, of about 8,732 hours, just to show what the impact on volunteering has had since the pandemic began. And transportation continues to be one of our busiest programs. So the major expenses, about almost 20 grand for the transportation program. Tires, maintenance, oil changes, all that good sort of stuff to keep our seniors safe.
Thank you.
That's what I had.
So Jennifer, I have just one question. I think the committee would be interested. A couple of years ago, you were requesting additional position for a program coordinator. And it seems like the programs have expanded in terms of hybrid, in-person, et cetera. Is there still a need for that position? And is that something you're hoping to be able to get in the future? I know it's not in this year's budget, but.
Thank you for the question. Yes. I do remember right before, I would say, was it March, 15th of 2020, going through, all of these meetings and having the discussion over and over again, and me pleading and saying we need, a program coordinator. We're one of the few senior centers in the state that doesn't have one. And that really does limit the type and quantity and quality of programs that we can offer, because it all comes down to the number of hours it takes to run a program. It can take 20 hours, out of 1 month just to set up a real meaningful, thoughtfully planned program. And now you add in the component of having to incorporate the hybrid option or remote for folks that don't want to return to in-person, or for our instructors that are not comfortable wearing a mask in front of a group of seniors and trying to articulate. It can be really challenging. So the need is still there, but what I realized very quickly early on was that I wanted to redefine what that position looks like, again, in a thoughtful way, as things continue to shift and change throughout, our experiences. So, whereas a year and a half or 2 years ago, I might not have included, the requirement to understand technology and Zoom meetings. Well, I mean, that's a huge component of what it is that we're doing now, as well as a lot of work with social media, outreach that way to be comfortable. So I want to redefine the way that position looks. I've been working with the Council on Aging Board to reach out to other communities to see how their descriptions have shifted during the course of the pandemic. And I think that we have this opportunity within the Great Resignation, as I'm coining, I'm using that term a lot right now, to really define what a modern program coordinator looks like and to be more thoughtful about it, especially as we move forward with a possible expansion. Where we're extremely limited is in that if I wanted to offer more programs and we've exceeded the capacity for what our building can do, there is an opportunity to look at, off-site programs. Well, one of the religious-based affiliations, or you're looking, using the public schools in the summertime, programs at the library. We can't physically do that because I can't staff the programs there. So there are a lot of challenges without having that position. I will be requesting it again once it's been redefined in a more thoughtful way.
Thank you. Other questions for Jennifer?
Andy, you have your hand raised.
I have two questions. Excuse me. Back in the revolving funds.
Yeah, if you could scroll back up, Nancy, to the pages with their revolving funds. Okay, go back
No.
down. Which one, Andy, are you interested in?
Down to the fiscal year 23 special fund review and expenditure worksheet. Next page. That's one. Jennifer, could you provide to Develine, who can provide to us actuals of revenue and expenditures for fiscal years 21 and 22 in these categories?
I'm going to tell you, I can get, work with Sue to get the numbers. During fiscal year 2020, half of 20 and, the first half of 21, we didn't bring in any revenue and we didn't expend any funds because we were completely remote. We funded all of our program fees through the donation account. So the numbers from, this presentation would look very different from years past. We spent $27,000 on fitness instructors and educational programs during the course of the pandemic out of the donation account. So this is what a typical year would look like, and this is me planning for, what would hopefully be a typical year.
Yeah, and what I'm trying to get back to is what the numbers looked like last time it was a typical year, which I guess would have, fiscal year 20, maybe.
This is pretty close to what our expenditures do look like. Again, you can see that there's a lot of funding that comes in and then is again expended under fitness, and because it's $3 or $5 a program. Trips, we're hopeful, we're planning trips again starting in May, and that's pretty much what we typically would expend on it. But if you'd like the report for the actual funds, I can work with Sue to get that.
That would be great. I appreciate that. And the other question I had, and I don't know if this is a impertinent question. If it is, I apologize. But on the third fund, which is Elder Services gift account donations, you anticipate revenues of 31,000, but you anticipate spending 7,000 to get that. Is that?
That's
There's a
correct.
beginning balance.
What?
There's a beginning balance to start the year of $74,000.
Where is that? Up top, I see, okay.
On top.
Yeah, okay. Now, my question, so it starts at 74,000, you anticipate bringing in 31,000 and expending 39. But I guess my question was, is that a too high a percentage for appeal costs?
That's the cost of the postage and the paper and the mailing services. So we send out it's a card with a letter in an envelope to every address in Hingham, and we get that information from the town clerk's office. So that's the actual expenditure on that might be $30 less than what's on here. I rounded up.
Okay, so to make a one-time mailing appeal to every household costs approximately $7,000, and you would anticipate that would result in 30,000, 31,000 donations.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Let me just bring the note too on here that there's a one-time expenditure that we're expecting for the community needs assessment as well.
Yep. Okay.
You have questions?
Yes. First of all, Jennifer, thank you for everything that you and your staff do with elder services. I'm sure that Andy meant to say that, but he's getting older and I might have forgotten. But my question,
A little forgetful, I don't see any memory enhancement services or programs, so nothing I can do about it.
but my question is, where do things stand in terms of moving towards electric and hybrid vehicles?
Oh, that's a great question. So we did actually replace our medical vehicle in August. We had to carry over the funds from last year because there was a delay in finding the vehicles that we needed. But we traded in a 2014 Ford Fusion for a 2021 Toyota Camry hybrid vehicle. So that's our one vehicle. The vans, on the other hand, the shuttle vans, I haven't seen a contract with a hybrid van at this point. I'm hoping to apply for a Mass DOT, I think it's a 5310 transportation grant, which isn't released until April or May. And looking at replacing our 2011 shuttle van with a 2021 vehicle that has a very long name that lowers to the ground so that our seniors can get in instead of having to climb up the stairs, which I can see is increasingly taxing. But I haven't seen anything with a hybrid shuttle vehicle option.
Is that something that would be actively explored to get them online when they are feasible and available?
It would be wise to, and it's from what I understand that, the state's looking at enacting that as a law. I don't know the exact year on that. You probably guys know better than I do. But with the grant that I'd be applying for to offset the cost of a $110,000 vehicle, they contract with certain manufacturers and vendors of the vehicles. And from the paperwork from last year, as I said, the information doesn't get released until April or May. So I'm using last year's information for the presentation, here. There wasn't a hybrid option included in that.
Okay, great, thank you.
Jennifer, I have a quick question for you about the community needs assessment and whether that initiative and your board would be at all guided by the town's master plan that was recently completed, or if you have any kind of plan to look at that to try to, or if they're different.
Well, they're different, but they're related. So I think that's a great observation or question, Julie, because during the process of the assessment, there will be interviews, 4 or 5 interviews with town personnel, and initially I go to the, select board members, I go to the town administration, but perhaps giving some thought to the town planning department would be wise.
And then to perhaps use the master plan for producing your 5-year strategic plan.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know that there was a lot of work done. It's been quite some time since I was involved in that, again, before the pandemic. I did go to several of the meetings because I wanted the seniors to be represented when discussing the plan. And a lot of what they expressed was very consistent with, what our initiatives are, looking at rebranding, looking at expanding, parking was always a big discussion. But yes, that's information that we will provide to I forget her exact title at UMass as she's developing the study.
Okay, great, thank you. Does anyone else have any other questions? Okay, so Daveline, do you have a recommendation?
I do. So I recommend for the elder services budget, total in salaries of $286,334 and total of expenses for elder services of $26,400. And big thanks to Jennifer for everything she's been doing and her staff. And
thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thanks for coming out tonight, coming online tonight. Okay, so next we have health imperatives.
Sorry
That's
about that.
Kristen.
Yeah, sorry about that. So I worked with Michelle on this. I'm not sure if she was attending tonight or if she's at Board of Selectmen, so.
She'll be coming by later.
Okay, but this is such a short one, so I can go through it. So this is for, this is level funded, same as last year for $2,700. This is actually for a company called Health Imperatives of Plymouth. They're located in Plymouth, so you'd have to go there for services or talk to them on the phone. But they provide free social services to Hingham residents. This includes reproductive health care and other health services. And I know it did come up at the Board of Selectmen meeting, asking if there was another location that was closer than Plymouth. They said that they would look into it. On the website, the other closest location is Brockton. So nothing else local, but again, services, free social services for Hingham residents.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for Kristen about this budget? I think we have this budget every year.
Yeah,
Not sure why it's all zeroed out for 20 and
I know, I
21.
noticed that too.
That's because we had to encumber every year because they keep forgetting to send bills.
Oh. Okay.
So they really need our money. That's what you're saying.
They really need it, but they neglect to, send us the paperwork.
Well, perhaps they're just really good on the social services end and not on the accounting end. Anybody else have a question? Okay, Kristen, do you have a recommendation?
Yes, I recommend for health imperatives, expenses in the amount of $2,700.
All right, thank you. And next we have South Shore Women's Center.
That's me as well. This again is also level funded for $3,700 for this year. This is providing social services to Hingham residents. Again, this is a nonprofit organization called South Shore Resource and Advocacy Center. They provide domestic violence prevention, intervention, and education, and counseling and support.
All right. And maybe they have the same billing issues.
Yes, they do. I don't know. They must be connected.
And they are also located in Plymouth.
Okay. Anyone have any questions? All right, Kristen, you have a recommendation?
I recommend for South Shore Women's Center expenses in the amount of $3,700.
Okay, thanks, Kristen. Now we have a couple of budgets for DPW, landfill, recycling, and sewer. And there's a team who work on that, headed up by Tina Sherwood. And do we have Randy Sylvester?
Yes.
Hi, Randy.
Hello.
Okay, Tina, take it away.
Great. Randy and Matt were at the select board meeting earlier. So I'm glad they were able to slide over, and thanks for your patience. George, Brenda, Caitlin, and I met with Randy and Matt earlier last week. We split the budgets, the three budgets, and I took DPW, Brenda took landfill and recycling, and George and Caitlin looked at sewer. So to start, the 2023 request for salaries is in the amount of $2,488,761. That's actually a small decrease. It's less than 1%, and that's due to retirements and new hires that came in at lower salaries. You'll notice there are additional requests that we're not going to be considering this evening, but for a total of $111,366, which includes both an assistant engineer and a part-time office assistant who would be shared with Ware River Water. Randy can speak to that in his presentation. He had 6 open recs and has been able to hire 2 new employees so far. On the expenses side, the 2023 request is for $835,222. It's an increase of just 4.2%. There are repair and maintenance numbers increasing for vehicles, buildings, and computer equipment. The buildings are over 10 years old and require updates like on garage doors, windows, door locks, and hinges. Additional cost to repair these things are going up. And the vehicles are also aging. They've been getting deferred in replacement from a regular 6 to 8 year to an 8 to 10 year cycle. But you'll notice the largest increase is in vehicle fuel. which went from 79,007 to 109,700, which represents an increase of almost 39%. But if you look in the spreadsheet where fuel and utilities are calculated, that increase actually comes after a decrease in the projected amount of gallons, because fuel costs are now so much higher. There's a $2,000 increase in road sign supplies. We have road repair work on the horizon, and $1,250 for physicals and exams, which have to be done for licensing. There are offsets, $6,000 decrease in ground maintenance, 1,000 radios, modest decrease in natural gas, and electric has held steady. We're not going to talk about capital outlay, but Randy noted that he is going to be speaking with capital outlay, and he can speak to that in his when he speaks about this. And I figure I touched on snow removal and road maintenance. So the snow removal budget right now is level at 626,738,000. But we did speak about the catastrophic windstorm that we held in October. We had boy, the DPW did an awful lot of work, renting specialized equipment, removing over 150 trees in 2 days, and moved over 6,000 yards of wood chips into Bear Cove Park. Road maintenance, the request is also level $387,000. It's a $1,500 increase. And drainage services, because there are additional stormwater requirements now from the EPA. So that's a high level covering the DPW. I don't know if you want to ask Randy questions now or through landfill and recycling and sewer first.
Well,
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, while we're looking at this page right now, does anyone have any questions about the detail on the DPW budget? Okay, not right now. So I guess what we could do.
I think
would it make
Andy's
sense?
trying to say something.
Sorry, Matt.
I was just curious about the why there's no vehicle fuel increase in the public works snow removal. Is that just hoping that things?
That's level funded, and the increase comes through the I don't do a spreadsheet for that. That's a level funded item that we go through every year.
Yeah.
I would like to see it increased, the snow budget, but that's entirely up to the selectmen and you guys.
Okay. And when you say you don't do a spreadsheet for that, you mean you just you take when you're told to level fund it by the selectmen, you just transfer the numbers, is that it?
So in fuel, in all the other departments that have a fuel line, and you have the spreadsheet that I figure out the amount of fuel that we're going to use.
Yeah.
There's no way of finding or estimating the use of fuel during a snowstorm or during that season. So it's basically level funded every year. The other departments, I can estimate the amount of fuel that we will or do use from past usage and the usages in the present year. So I can estimate that. And the difference is in that is, again, the cost of the fuel itself.
I get it. That's good. Thank you.
Anyone have any other questions for Randy about these DPW numbers for right now? Okay, so why don't we go to the numbers for landfill and recycling, and then do the same for sewer, and then maybe just finish up in one presentation, Randy, with your slides. Does that sound okay?
Sure.
All right, wait, while we're on here, so Tina, do you want to give a recommendation for DPW?
Sure. I recommend for Public Works for salaries, $2,488,761. For expenses, $835,222. For snow removal, $626,738. And for road maintenance, $387,000. That's a total budget of $4,337,721. And if you strip out the capital requests from last year's budget, that's just a marginal growth of less than 1%.
Okay. Thanks, Tina. So Brenda, can we go to the landfill and recycling? Nancy, do you have those pages handy?
But my first question is, what would it take for the Munis sheets to refer to the transfer station and recycling rather than landfill and recycling? It's been 20 years since it was a landfill, 20 years plus. But anyway, Randy appropriately labels his budget transfer station and recycling. Okay, so.
And Nancy, can you increase those a little bit so we might be able to see on that first sheet?
I think she's got to find the sheet for landfill.
Yeah.
Which is separate file?
Must be, yeah.
I think it's a
It is,
separate
yeah.
file, yeah.
Yeah.
It's in the Public Works folder.
Is it past the sewer one? The next one past it? Jay?
It always sounds easy in theory until you're trying to put them up there.
Well, if we had budget books, we'd still be turning our pages.
Nancy, are you talking as you're muted? Okay, there's a folder in the Dropbox. Do you see that at the bottom?
No, I know, and it's part of this, and I'm just, for some reason, I can't see it with my eyeballs. But.
Sue, can you find it?
Did I just screw that up? Hold on, no, I have it. I apologize.
Nancy, I can pull it up if you are having difficulty finding
I
it.
have it. I just have to, I'm
Okay.
using 3 different computers, but if you have it right there, then it probably would be easier.
Sue, can you make me a share? Sue?
It feels a bit like a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode. I think maybe we're being
Oh,
filmed.
here, now I've got it.
George,
I've got it right now.
You got it?
I just made the calls.
I've got
All right, go for it, Nance.
it. Sorry. Oh, that was my,
Go.
there we go.
All right, landfill recycling.
All right.
Hopefully transfer station recycling. Okay. So requests for budget FY23, salaries, request of 717,645. That is an increase of 4.2% over the previous year's revised budget. And in terms of expenses for the transfer station, total request is for $1,071,358. That includes increases in repairs. The buildings at the transfer station are also aging and having more problems. Significant increase in electricity costs, I think, related to, no, other equipment repairs, again, aging equipment at this point. Significant increase in vehicle fuel. Diesel costs are obviously up as well as other fuel costs. Trash costs are up also. Randy alerted us that the current contract Hingham has will have increases in trash cost per ton, increasing each year for the next chunk of years. Currently $85 a ton. Total actual tonnage, not larger expected at this point. There is a new line item for consultant service of $7,000. This is a new requirement from DEP for monitoring the gases coming out of the landfill, the capped landfill. In addition to that, the site monitoring costs below, which have been ongoing requirements by DEP, those costs have increased because the former contractor was doing it for somewhat significantly less, and now the current contractor is doing it for sort of more expected rates. Recycling costs are holding steady, and I guess the good news from Randy was that apparently the recycling markets are stabilizing a little bit, and perhaps more things will be able to be paid for of the materials that we're recycling. He is making use of last year's capital outlay request of a new baler to bale up more materials by type of material, which makes them more sellable at a better price. So all of that adds up to an increase of 3.4%.
Okay, does anyone have any questions about landfill recycling, transfer station recycling? So Randy, when you say about when the recycling costs are stabilizing, is that a temporary stabilization, you think, or is it?
The markets seem to be coming back. So the costs aren't rising as much. I didn't see a need to increase the budget there. But I don't know what's going to hold in the future. But I believe it's going to at least remain the same. Costs are, the price of recycling is going down a little bit, the markets. We did put that baler in, and we didn't use capital outlay money with it. We used our recycling dividend RDP funds recycling dividend program, which is a grant program, to put that baler in, which is going to total anywhere between $25,000 and $30,000 when it's done. It's been installed, and it should be going online this month. It just needs a startup on it. And the reason why we put that in is because we can pick and choose the commodities that we bale and get a significant return on the money because of the market. Right now, especially in the plastics part of it. So we can isolate the plastics that that have the highest returns, and we can bale them and get that money back into the recycling program. Actually, it goes right directly back to the budget. Right now, we end up paying and giving these plastics away because we bale them in bulk to get rid of them. So we didn't use capital funds on that. We did use the RDP funds on that bale. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. Thank you. Anyone have any other questions about this particular budget right now for Randy or Brenda? Daveline.
Yeah, I have a question. I'm not sure exactly where it fits into this discussion, but as we attempt to be more carbon neutral, as we attempt to be greener and more environmentally good citizens, I guess, your budgets between sort of the equipment, the vehicles, the energy uses seem to be a place where we should be sort of thinking about that. And I wonder what kind of thoughts you have as we move forward to accomplishing that. I guess, I don't know if that's clear enough.
So we haven't really thought about that. I am in the DPW budget for the admin vehicle. I am putting for a hybrid in. There's no requirements for us to change our equipment at this point. So we haven't really looked at those types of changes in our program. And I haven't seen anything out there that basically the equipment that we use, any type of hybrid situation or electric vehicle that would suffice in what we do. So it's not that we won't do it in the future, it's that we haven't really looked at it really hard.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Randy. Thanks for being here.
No problem.
I know there's been a fair amount of discussion about transfer station fees. And if those fees were to, well, maybe you could give us a quick history or background on transfer station fees in other towns and how much revenue that could potentially generate, and whether, if applied to the DPW or transfer station budgets, what kind of reduction we could see.
So the transfer station fees for right now for the household for one vehicle, there is no charge. There is a bylaw, I believe, saying that residents would not have to pay for their trash to get rid of their trash. I did propose a increase in the C&D or construction and demolition fee for the residents and going over the scale, and also any of the recyclables that we actually get rid of that at one time we got rid of it for nothing, that the vendors just took it for free. We are now charging a fee for. It's somewhat nominal fee. I think the lowest fee is $10 per item. And things like mattresses, anything new that we have to pay for in the recycling end, we do charge for now. As far as other fees, any of the commercial entities that use the transfer station have to pay for a sticker. That's $150. And then they end up having to go over the scale unless they're a resident, a combo resident, and then they pay $50 per, $75 per sticker, and they only pay when they go over the scale. Their household trash is then again free in recycling. No, other than the fees I just spoke of. If residents want a second vehicle that's that has the ability to go into the transfer station, they do pay $25 for that privilege, and they do get a second sticker for $25. As far as since we put those fees into place, the scale has increased in its revenue quite a bit. It used to be about $75,000 a year, and at this point, which it hasn't been a total year yet, it's over $100,000. I can't remember when we actually put that into effect, but once we go a full year, I'll have better numbers on that. But we are pulling in probably close to $5,000 a week, where it used to be about $1,000.
And are those fees offsetting your expenses, or are they going into the town's general revenues?
Those fees go into the general revenue.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions about transfer station recycling right now? Oh, Tina?
I should have asked this when we talked last week. Have you thought about taking the bottle and can recycling money that you currently donate to organizations, or would that receive too much of a negative backlash?
I would think it would create a backlash. It's a very popular program, and we're probably 2 years out. One thing that if a group does not show up, then that will go into the recycling fund. I don't put it back into the budget, but I do put it into the recycling fund, where we do buy recycling containers and other things. Well, recycling containers, we buy the composting bins from that. Anything to do with recycling that we use those money towards.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have any questions right now for landfill recycling? Okay, Brenda, do you have a recommendation?
I do recommend for transfer station recycling a budget of $717,645 for salaries and $1,071,358 for expenses.
Okay, thanks, Brenda. And so now the final of the those budgets is sewer.
Sewer is mine, Julie. Caitlin and I worked on this one, and I won the coin flip.
Lucky you.
So I do have one thing to say regarding this budget, if I may. This budget has not been heard by the sewer commission yet, so it is a possibility it could change. The sewer commission could not meet until Thursday, so I will be presenting this budget to the commission on Thursday.
Okay.
Okay. You still want to go ahead with it, Julie?
Yeah, I mean, the select board has heard this tonight, correct?
The select board has not heard this. They
No.
chose not to hear it until the sewer commission has heard it and voted on it.
Oh, okay. So we should not go ahead with that because we usually defer to the select board to hear it first and obviously. So in your absence, Randy, is it okay if we go through, if we go through the budget at a future meeting? Or do you
Yes,
have a designee?
Matt Cahill, the assistant,
Okay,
will have all the documentation and whatnot, and he can go through the budget.
okay. All right, so we'll just push this to, well, I guess when the select board, I'll just double check when they hear it, but we'll sync up with them. That sound okay? And we'll, George can contact you, Matt, about the next hearing date. It would either be January 4th or January 11th. Does that sound okay? Okay, so you're nodding your head.
It's good with me. Okay.
Okay, so now then, skipping over sewer, but maybe you can talk a little, well, yeah. Randy, if you wouldn't mind, just kind of going through the highlights of the PowerPoint presentation on the DPW and transfer station.
Do you
Does
have the
anyone have
PowerPoint?
Last questions. I think Nancy's gonna pull that up. Here we go.
Okay. Okay. So the DPW has 6 divisions: engineering, fleet maintenance, highway, sewer, transfer station, and tree and park. We can go to the next slide. We have 140 miles of public roads, 100 miles of drain lines, 60 miles of sidewalks, over 10,000 drainage structures, over 10,000 public shade trees, which a lot of them were knocked down through the last storm. We have approximately 80 pieces of snow removal equipment, 3,100 traffic signs, and of course, we have 5 sets of traffic signals now. And the transfer station operates 4 days a week with about 8,000 plus vehicles per week. And that's actually going up as we speak. It's more like 9,000 now. And we also have, in the sewer division, we have 13 pump stations that we deal with. Next slide. Again, the key initiatives, October 30th, 2021, we had that windstorm, and one of our main goals was the storm response and the recovery. And as I discussed before, or maybe it was with the selectmen, we did bring in specialized piece of equipment through a contractor. We have a tree contractor that is under state contract with us. And they took down around 150 trees in 2 days with 2 specialized pieces of equipment. Again, those trees were on houses, on wires, knocking down poles. They had a crew with them. They had our crews. We had 4 other tree crews out for approximately a month, and we are still not done with the total, basically, devastation that happened. We did have a private contractor, you might have saw him this week and last week, is that they were pulling out the stumps that affected any sidewalks or roadway, and they're repairing them. We have, of course, the ongoing road reconstruction program and the utility coordination, and that is primarily with the gas company and now the water company. They'll replace mains according to our road building program. and we talk to them every year and make adjustments, and they will go in and replace their mains. And after that, we will go in and do any drainage upgrades, and then we will repave the road. We also have the MS4 stormwater permit compliance, which is ongoing. And you'll see in future years, the costs go up because the requirements get greater every year. There is more stringent requirements as we go. Some of the requirements is that we have an illicit discharge program. So that means we have to go and test every outfall, so many outfalls a year. We have to map our system. And then if we find an illicit discharge, we have to do testing and go back in the system till we find it and then eliminate it. And those requirements will be more stringent as we go forward. We also, one of the big requirements every year is the DEP grant applications. And we apply every year to do that. And that's why we have the ability to put in that baler at no cost really to the town. We did use the RDP funds for that, and that's a grant application that I put in every year. And we get anywhere from $12,000, or we have anywhere from $12,000 to $15,000 a year, depending if we meet the requirements. We also do public education regarding recycling regulations and the changes, which seem to be changing on a regular basis. So we do public outreach for that. On the sewer side, we do have an inflow and infiltration program, which it used to be a grant loan program from the MWRA. That is no longer. They just have a loan program, a low interest loan. So the Sewer Commission has decided to put in capital funds, which I do put in $100,000 a year. There is one year where we had extra inflow and infiltration projects. I put in 200,000 for that, but this year is 100,000. Of course, we do grounds maintenance for all the public facilities, pretty much most of them. And then we did a transfer fee analysis, and basically we're still doing that. We're looking into a pay-as-you-throw program. So salaries and expenses, personnel-wise in the DPW as a whole, we have 52 full-time staff. We have three part-time staff. And the budget salaries and expenses goes like this, and it's DPW of $4 million, total of $4,337,721. $626,738 is for snow removal. $387,000 is for the road maintenance, and $284,000 is for paving supplies. In the transfer station, the total budget is $1,789,003, and in the sewer is $3,703,041. And you did mention that additional requests. I am asking for an assistant engineer for $85,000, and that is to assist the town engineer as we speak, is because he hasn't so many projects, and this would help him out for, road construction and the 3A design projects and public safety facilities, traffic committee, harbor wall resiliency, and the program of public safety improvements, and help with getting grants. Also, I'm putting in for a part-time office assistant, which would combine with a part-time that's already there for the Ware River system, an administrative staff position. I was talking to the water superintendent, and I came up with this idea. If we got one assistant, they could help get a full-time employee and assist with the water superintendent and the town engineers in their administrative tasks. And that's about all I have for the presentation. Any questions?
Thanks, Randy. Brenda.
Yes, hi, Randy. In the tree and park department, I realize that's probably the smallest equipment, at least some of the smaller equipment that you have. Any of those available in electric form? I know I was reading in the Globe that Wellesley is no longer using gas-powered leaf blowers, weed whackers, those kinds of things. Are those part of your tree and park program?
We haven't looked at that, as I said earlier. We will moving forward. But at this point, we have not done that. We're at this juncture, we're looking more towards safety and safety equipment regarding tree and park, especially. We haven't got into going to the electric equipment, but we probably will in the future.
Okay.
Do a cost analysis and whatnot. So
Fuel costs obviously go down.
Yeah.
Electricity costs go up, but yep. Thank you.
Randy, do you have, can you speak to that storm at the end of October? And obviously there was a ton of work, and it was like a massive snowstorm and then some in terms of cost for all the tree removal. Do you have a, go ahead.
Yeah, that storm turned out, from talking to our tree contractor, Hingham got probably hit the hardest. And to be honest with you, I worked 2 or 3 hurricanes. And this is probably the worst I've seen the town since it wasn't local or a part of town. It was all over town. It was South Hingham. It was West Corner. There's trees down on houses all over the town. And again, we brought in this specialized piece of equipment from Mar Tree, and they had the ability to go and take these trees off, where we would have had to bring in tree crews. We still would have the tree crews, which would be a couple months out. We got most of the worst situations done in 2 days. We cleared all the roads. We worked with a light company to get the electricity up and running, especially where poles were down. We were in collaboration with them to find out where we needed to go, where the power was off, where we could work safely. And we dispatched all that equipment to those sites and locations. Again, as I mentioned, we are still working. We don't have the trees crew coming in as we speak, but we are removing stumps, and we're not quite done with repaving these sidewalks and roads from that devastation. The costs are probably going to be, it's at least $350,000, and it's probably going to be another $50,000 to $100,000 when we're all said and done. And that's just on the DPW side. As far as the light company goes, it was about $300,000. We did look in to see if there was a FEMA, if it was an event where FEMA would cover it. And as a county, we had to come up with $11 million worth of costs. And between the DPW and the light company, we came up with about $1 million, but the rest of the towns didn't. We came up short. We ended up with about 7 million. So it was not qualified for FEMA to reimburse us at all. So we are going to eat that cost. So there will be a reserve fund transfer at the end of the year of some sort.
All right,
Did I answer your question?
you did. Thank you. Andy, you have a question?
Yes, I take it that if somebody calls you and says that a tree in my yard has been blown over onto my roof, that you, if you can, will send out a crew to remove that tree, is that correct?
If it's a town tree. So anyone who calls in, we basically measure out where the town layout is. We have several methods of doing that. Hopefully we can find a bound or whatnot. I am in the process of GPSing and putting it on our maps, all the bounds that I can find. So in the future, if there is a question, we can locate them and actually let them know whether it's a town tree or not. So if a tree does come down and it does cause that damage and it's a town tree, then yes, we will go and deal with that tree. But if it's a private tree and it lands on a private structure, then it's a private problem.
Anyone else have any questions for Randy? Okay. Well, we appreciate you putting together all this information for us, Randy, and we'll check back with Matt about hearing the sewer budget. And I think we're all set. Thank you.
I appreciate your time, and I do thank you all. Thank you.
Take care.
Have a good night.
Okay. So next up we have on our agenda town clerk and elections, and I've seen Carol on, and Sarah has joined us. Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
You ready to take it away? And Nancy, if you can display, guess we'll start with town clerk. Does that sound okay, Sarah?
Yeah, that sounds fine.
Great.
Thanks for your patience and with me tonight. Okay, so I'm just looking through my materials. Okay, so Carol and I went through the town clerk budget for this year. And you'll notice on the salaries, essentially it is Carol's salary, and she has 2 full-time employees there fully utilized. And it's slightly up from the year before, just due to the employees increases, but the Carol's salary is actually lower than the previous Eileen's town salary, just because of, you know, how long she had been in the job. And then with the expenses, some of it has to do with some initiatives that Carol has been working on. For example, some of the office supplies and postage are up a bit because of an initiative to proactively send out birth certificates to new parents to take one thing off their plate. In a prior year, one of the biggest discrepancies was you can see in the printing services from the prior budget to this one. There is a special use fund that Carol can tell you a little bit about. that special use fund, it comes from a state grant and it was applied to reduce that cost last year. But Carol, starting fresh as town clerk, feels that that she's not going to use that fund for that particular use. And she can probably tell you more if anyone has questions about that. And then one of the biggest things you'll see both with the printing services, et cetera, is this year there's going to be 3 elections. Not only the town election, but also the national primary and regular 2022 election. So some of the expenses have gone up because there will be 3 of those instead of just 1. So that is reflected here as well. And I think, is that all I'm supposed to say? I'm so new at this.
We're doing great. We're doing great. That's right. And okay, so on this Eunice page, does anyone have any questions right now for Sarah before we take it over to Carol, and Carol can go through the slides? Okay. So I don't remember if the slides have town clerk and elections combined, but so maybe actually, Sarah, maybe we could just do the does it make sense to do the, well, go ahead and Carol, go through your budget presentation, and then we can
Sure, Nancy, if you'll do it, I can just ask you to you can go to the next slide, please. So just to talk a little bit about what our mission and the services are, I'm going to go a little bit out of order. We process vital records, which include about 30 birth certificate, marriage, and death certificates per week. We post and maintain agendas for over 40 committees and boards on a regular basis in compliance with the open meeting law. We serve as a public record access officer, fielding inquiries for public record requests and ensuring that responses go out in a timely manner. We compile and send out the annual warrant for town meeting and certify votes to the Attorney General, the Department of Revenue, and the Secretary of the Commonwealth. We oversee licensing for both business certificates and for the various dog licenses, which takes a lot of woman power in my office. There's so many steps involved with verifying rabies vaccination, collecting fees, insurance for off-leash program at Bear Cove. Hingham loves their dogs, and they have a lot of, we spend a lot of time on dogs in this town. Some areas that I haven't yet been involved with, which is hard to believe because it's been 6 months that I've been on the job, is the collection and compilation of information for the annual street listing census that will be coming your way next month. And of course, and as Sarah mentioned, the administration of state and local elections, and there will be 3 in fiscal year 23. There'll be the state primary in September, the November election, and then the local election the following May. Next slide, please. And I'll just go through this. I included this because I was so proud of our town. We had almost 4,100 people that voted in the spring election, which was a nice bump up from obviously during COVID, but even from 2019. So yay Hingham, we got out and voted. Next slide, please. And again, mentioned we have 3 elections coming up. We're anticipating that there'll be early voting for these elections, although that clause or that law is sunsetting tomorrow, and the Massachusetts legislature has not extended it, but from conversations that I've had with our legislators, they do expect that there will be either an extension or some agreement on the Voting Act to in the next few months. So in this budget, I have anticipated that there would be early mail-in ballots and people power and postage included with that. We hope to expand our communication streams to include some social media for outreach this year. And as Sarah mentioned, we are sending out birth certificates proactively. We generate them in the town as children are born. And we just felt that it would be nice to send them out to parents so they don't have to worry about this. It's like one less thing for them to think about. And finally, I have a whole new staff. So we are training and managing the people in my office. And I just have to give a shout out to Eileen McCracken, who has been amazingly supportive of me and my new staff and has helped to mentor and train all of us. So we're so lucky to have her. Absolutely. And you see the expenses, mainly it's all salary related. We have some large printing and postage expenses. And I think the last screen, Nancy, is for the elections, which again includes the part-time personnel or all the various staff that work at the elections. They're all part-time people. We will be paying them minimum wage in this budget. They've been paid under minimum wage in the past. And again, we have the expenses for 3 elections, postage, computer services agreements, which go with, that are attached to both our poll pads and to our tabulators, which are the machines that you put your ballot into. So that is basically this in a nutshell.
All right.
Any questions?
Well, why don't we have now switch over, Sarah, to
Yep.
the elections numbers, and then you can give a recommendation on those 2 different budget areas and take questions also.
Sure. So yeah, on the elections, you know, the main thing you'll see is increase in salaries because of the 3 elections. So a lot of the things on there, the reason that they're higher than the prior budget is because everything is ×3. And so that includes the clerical services and custodian fees and and also, as Carol said, I think, you know, it is important to note that there's been a decision to pay minimum wage, which you know, I particularly think is more than fair, but also in this tight job market, you know, you really want to get good people to work the polls. We need them. And then on the expenses too, you know, some of the line items you'll see exactly, it's just ×3. And that's where the increase is for the different elections. You know, one of the expenses that you'll see, office supplies has increased. And also there's a computer services increase. And what that is, Carol mentioned, is because of the town census, the population has grown and there's actually going to be an additional precinct added. And so because of that, they're buying an additional poll check-in iPad and the software that goes along with that to support the new precinct. And so open it up to questions.
Anyone have any questions about the elections budget? No. Okay, so Sarah, can we have recommendation for both the elections budget and then, sorry, Nancy, we'll have to go back to the town clerk budget.
Yes, on the elections budget, my recommendation is that we fund it as requested. Is that what I say?
You read out
Sorry.
the number. That's okay. You read out the number for the total of the salaries.
Got it.
and the
Sorry.
number
So
for the
my
total of
recommendation.
Expenses. Yeah.
I could have benefited from being here a half an hour earlier, and I apologize. I would recommend the $22,486 for salaries, and I would recommend expenses of $26,665 for a total of $49,151
Okay, great.
for elections.
And the additional request will cover later on in budget season. And then going back over, thanks Nancy, to the town clerk budget.
Yes. So I would recommend we fund the salaries at $190,658. And I would recommend we fund the expenses at $14,583 for a total of $205,241.
All right. Well, thank you, Carol, and your team for coming in and turning over a new chapter in the town clerk's office. So thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you for
Thanks,
all of
Carol.
your work on this, and great to meet you, Sarah.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks, Sarah. All right, so I had next on the budget conservation, but I'm not sure if that is a mistake, actually. Who is conservation?
I am also conservation.
Okay. Now, I don't know. Oh, yeah, no, conservation, yeah, we have that. They were covered already by the select board. So do we have any folks from conservation?
Yes, Emily Sullivan is here.
Okay, hi, Emily. Okay. All right, take it away.
Okay, great. So on the salaries, again, there were just regular step ups for the staff, and then there's been a change in department head. Emily is new, and that is the reason why that request is actually lower, is because Emily is new on the job. And then some of, a lot of the expenses were similar than last year, but one of the grounds initiatives that we were working on, I believe it was related to the dams project that you were working on, Emily, and just generally work because the increased traffic and different conservation areas has been heavy during the pandemic, and also any storm cleanup and things like that they have to take care of with the grounds budget. And I'm trying to see if there's anything else that I had noted. Most costs are up a little bit. I think that's just general increase in costs in general, postage, for example. But there wasn't anything that jumped out at me too much on the expenses other than the grounds.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for Sarah about these numbers on the conservation budget? Okay, Emily, do you want to take it away for a minute and just discuss the?
Yeah,
welcome.
of course. Well, thank you so much. It's great to be here. It's great to meet everyone virtually. The primary function of the Conservation Office is to support the Conservation Commission in the administration of the state's Wetlands Protection Act, the Rivers Protection Act, the Hingham Wetlands Protection Bylaw, and the Hingham Wetland Regulations. And so that essentially translates to a lot of permitting and inspections. Additionally, the department responds to public inquiries, primarily from property owners, prospective property owners, real estate agents, lawyers, et cetera, about the feasibility of doing construction projects on private property. We also get public inquiries as they relate to Conservation Commission land. The commission's responsible for almost 1,000 acres of land in Hingham. And as Sarah noted, that land does require some maintenance and management. Additionally, the Conservation Office manages a hunting program. There are 2 hunting seasons. There is a fall deer hunting season and a turkey season in the spring. The department implements the town's open space and recreation plan, as well as the comprehensive trails plan. And then finally, the department coordinates with federal, state, and local agencies, as well as local nonprofits like watershed associations on different environmental projects. The metrics that we most commonly use to look at the performance of the office is how many applications we receive and then permits we issue. And so one thing to note is that there are multiple conservation applications and permits. So some have a filing fee of $30, and then others can have a filing fee of a couple hundred or a couple thousand. And so it's hard to predict based on the number of permit applications what the revenue for that that year will be. But this is just representative of permit applications and revenue generated from fiscal year 2019 to 2021. Key initiatives for the Conservation Office this year will be to continue to manage our properties and then identify improvements. We, since the commission does own approximately 1,000 acres of land, and through the pandemic, we've certainly seen more people use the land. We want to make sure that we're maintaining the properties so that they're safe in terms of trail access, and then any hazardous trees are just addressed. Additionally, the commission owns and manages multiple conservation restrictions. And so this is just an additional deed protection on conservation land, and conservation restrictions require annual monitoring. We want to continue to bolster partnerships with local organizations, groups, and volunteers. Hingham has a really rich history of conservation. And I think that love of conservation has certainly been obvious during the pandemic. And we're also hoping to tap into maybe some of the new populations that have used conservation lands over the past year and a half, who maybe haven't used them before. So we want to continue to generate excitement about conservation across town. And then finally, the commission is certainly interested in revising its wetland regulations to comprehensively consider climate change impacts. I think the town has done a really great job of investing in some climate resiliency studies, particularly as it relates to the Inner Harbor. And so I think the commission was inspired by some of the good work that DPW and the engineering department did for that, and sees an opportunity to more holistically incorporate climate change, like sea level rise, increased flooding, and increased extreme heat into its regulations. And so the breakup or the makeup of the Conservation Office is there are 2 full-time personnel. It's me and the administrative assistant, and then there's a part-time assistant conservation officer who works 24 hours a week. A bulk of the budget request is for salaries, but we also have approximately $15,000 requested for expenses. Those expenses include $7,000 for property maintenance. So, for example, there are several meadows in conservation lands that need to be mowed annually. And then there's also, there are 2 dams that the commission owns, the Foundry Pond Dam and the Trip Hammer Pond Dam. And those dams just require specific vegetation removal to make sure that their integrity isn't compromised. So we have recurring maintenance needs on our properties, but we also have unexpected maintenance needs, such as hazardous trees, which I know you just had a conversation with Randy at DPW about how many trees fell or became hazardous over this past fall. And that's certainly something that the Conservation Office has to respond to if a tree on conservation land is next to private property or falls onto private property, or like a deck or something like that. So that's what that funding would be used for. And then additionally, we're requesting $5,000 for consultant services. And this is something that the office has requested in the past. And an example of a project that was funded through this is the forest stewardship plan for the town forest. So it's funding that would be used for a special project that relates to conservation land and improving conservation land. And then I know Sarah said this nicely, but essentially this is a level service funding request, but the funding request is lower for fiscal year 23 than fiscal year 2022 because I'm a new department head.
Okay. Thanks, Emily. And does anyone have any questions for Emily or Sarah about this budget? No questions for conservation? Okay. All right, so if we can go back to the munis sheet for Sarah, she can give us a recommendation.
Thank you so much. So I would recommend that we fund the Conservation Commission salaries at $196,884. And I would recommend that we fund Conservation Commission expenses at $15,522 for a total budget funding recommendation of $212,406.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Emily, for joining us tonight. Very nice
Thanks,
to meet
Emily.
you.
Thank you.
And thanks, Sarah, for your work on the budgets. And now we have, oh, we still have Sarah because we have Bear Cove Park.
Excellent. Okay. And I can't see my grid. Are folks here from Bear Cove Park?
So Ray O'Neill's here. I don't know that.
Oh, hey, Ray.
I don't see Claudia though.
Oh, okay.
But I can,
Okay.
if she doesn't join us, I can be a proxy.
You can, okay, thank you so much. That's great. Okay, so Ray and Claudia and I had a conversation the other day about Bear Cove Park. And you know, some of the things going on with Bear Cove Park is you'll see an increase in salaries. They have a part-time ranger, Scott McMillan, who's there. And it is a level hourly rate that they're applying, but Scott has increased hours, and maybe when we get there, Ray can speak to exactly how that works, but it's something to do with, I think, how long Scott has been in the job, that he's entitled to increased hours. And so that's why that is increased. But also, you know, if he's fully utilized in those hours, in that the traffic in the park has increased exponentially, you know, due to the pandemic. And Scott also runs a museum in the park of artifacts, I think, from when it was in military service. I haven't seen it myself, but I'm curious now. But what they told me, which was really neat, was that when the museum is open, they've had 60 plus visitors at a time on a weekend day, and they have some pictures they can share of the increased use. But then on the expenses side, there really wasn't any increased ask year over year on the expenses. So really the main difference is just in that increased salary. And the other thing to keep in mind is a lot of events that Bear Cove Park has counted on in the past, you know, such as like a 5K or things, you know, they'll host it in exchange for donation. And a lot of those things haven't been able to happen. So their revenue is down because of that. And that's all I have. Ray, do you want to or no,
Yeah, if we
sorry.
can go to the slides, I'll try to muscle through. Claudia was the prime on this, so bear with me if I stutter a little. So our mission and services, you know, we're over 400 acres of wildlife sanctuary and public recreation area. We received the land back in 1971 from the government. It was a munitions depot for both world wars and Korea. So there's a lot of history there. There's a rumor we haven't validated that JFK was actually stationed there for a little while. And, we're dedicated to conserving the tranquility of the estuary. It's a beautiful spot with wetlands, fields, woods, a lot of animal life and plant life. And we have paved roadways as a direct benefit of the military or direct bonus from the military. They had all the infrastructure built in, so there's nice walking trails. Our part-time ranger, Scott, he's does a lot for us. He keeps the park clean. He maintains the trails, mows the fields, plows the paved road surfaces. He blows the leaves off. And he's really the face of the park. When someone is in there and has a question, he's the guy. The other thing that has developed over the last couple of years is the rowing program for the high school has become, I started using it for spring training regattas. And I think they had a couple hundred people back there this past spring for a regatta. They've become a very robust program. So we like having them in there. And as mentioned, our only real fundraiser is the Beantown Loop Marathon. We received a one-time $50,000 allocation from the Cove for park use as part of I don't know if it was a land exchange or just the impact on the park. And we've been holding that money really to the side with the goal eventually to build some sort of pavilion or education platform for people to come and use and picnic, things like that. Can we go to the next slide, please? So our key initiatives talked about maintaining the trail program kiosks. I should say, there's marked kiosks where you can get a map and get the rules of the park. There's a Boy Scout of America's camp and a field management strategy for mating season, vernal pools, Hockley Run and Tucker Swamp. Plan for potential waterfront park structure, I talked about that. We were very interested in trying to find access to potable water at the waterfront. The rowing program has asked, as well as a lot of people who have come to the park have asked, because once you get deep in the park, it's, you're good 15, 20 minutes from the entrance. So, and then, if you had water. Let's see. So the museum, which if you haven't had a chance to visit, is really cool that Scott does. We would ultimately like to, maintain it. It's a historical building and find some electric. We had electric in the park at one point when they built, not the Cove, but the other apartments over there. Oh gosh, right near Litchfield, the field. Apparently the power line was cut and they never restored it and the developer moved on. So, create a trail and signage for building 151. So unbeknownst to us until recently, and some historians have found, there is an old burial vault within the park, and it was tied to the almshouse, and it really was a transient burial ground until the spring when they could dig and intern people permanently. But there's a lot of history and a lot of people have rested there. So also we have pollinator gardens, which is not necessarily a green initiative for along the lines of like what the DMV is trying to do with zero carbon footprint, but certainly good for the environment. We have two. We've done some outdoor educational programming through partnership with local teachers, and also Hingham Rec ran a program in the park this summer, 1 day a week. Let's see. We also have classes that citizens have proposed, for running, yoga, Pilates, and Tai Chi. So all zero impact as far as, not leaving a footprint behind. There is a park permit process for dogs. You guys probably remember the whole dog thing that went down a few years ago and was very controversial, but it's working out pretty well. The town clerk administers that for us. And it's an every other day off leash dog walking program. And there's also a building within the park called Building 80, which is, if you walk straight out of the conservatory, you kind of be in the neighborhood of where it is. And it's an old building. We keep our truck there along with maintenance equipment, and it's in pretty tough shape. So ultimately we want to get that building repaired, the roof most importantly, as well as some concrete work on sides. Can we go there? Thank you. There's just some pictures of the park. In the lower left is the boathouse where Scott gives tours, the rowing program, and then just you can see the level of traffic that we get. We'll go to the next one. So I don't know all the details and I apologize, but Scott fits a demographic where he's eligible to work more hours. Claudia has that information, so we can return with it at a later date. But basically, we're just looking for a small bump from 18 and a half hours to 23, given the park has exploded with COVID, just as far as the usage and number of people in there. So that would take us up to 24. And again, our expenses were level across the board other than that. Is there one more, or is that it?
Looks like the last slide.
Okay.
Hey, can I ask a question?
Of course.
Some of the buildings, like the Model Train Museum, the Fire Museum, all those buildings, they look on the map like they're within the park, but are you responsible for maintenance of those?
No, that kind of, so if you hit the model train building, that stone wall and the gate there, that's where we start inside.
Okay.
The park. Yeah, that all falls under the rest of the town.
Anyone else have any other questions? So last year there was an application to the Community Preservation Committee for building the public restroom, and then that didn't move forward. So I was just wondering if you have any plans. I know you have it on your slide, but any?
We're not doing it this year, and we know there's a lot of other stuff that's going to be on the agenda for the town, so we're going to wait another year to ask for those funds.
Okay. And that's interesting that, yeah, I remember one of the issues was bringing in water and bringing in electricity.
Yeah.
So that's something that you are working on trying to get access to.
Correct, and we're looking at alternative. As far as the electric, we're looking at both windmill and solar.
Mm-hmm.
Preliminary investigations, and then as far as the water, it's probably going to be a matter of having to dig a well if we can find fresh water there.
Right. Okay. Anyone else have any questions? All right. Sarah, do you want to go ahead with your recommendation, please? Oh, Sarah, you're on mute.
Thanks. Yep. I'm going to recommend, please, that we fund the salaries at $24,138, and recommend that we fund expenses at $9,390 for a total of $33,528.
Okay, well, thank you to the Bear Cove Park team for coming tonight, and thank you,
Thank
Sarah.
you.
Thank you for the opportunity, and bear with me while I fumble through it. Have a good night.
You did great, thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, so now we have on the agenda, and we have Michelle Monsegur here to talk about Town Hall. And I erred in adding select board to the end agenda because we all knew that that is still kind of undecided, that budget, or it's still in process. So sorry about that. But Michelle is here to talk about Town Hall.
So this is Brenda. I've got this budget. Obviously, everyone knows Michelle. Michelle, thank you for being here. So for Town Hall, the request this year is for $268,460 for salaries and expenses of $426,476. The request for salaries is an increase of 4%, and the request for expenses is a decrease of 5%. The overtime budget, by the way, under salaries is basically time needed for the custodians to come in to do snow removal around Town Hall and also to respond to different emergencies in that building. All of the mechanical systems are aging, and therefore there are more calls for that kind of coming and fixing things that need to be fixed. Going down to expenses, you'll see that there was a fairly high expense in FY 2021 for the Cushing Street property, which is part of this budget. That's the old light plant budget. building that was used, as people may remember, as a COVID testing site. Most of that money was reimbursed, I believe, through the CARES Act, but the budget for this coming year, $25,000, is basically for keeping the building open and available. The Hingham High School rowing team uses it during the winter, and they're in the process of setting up a specific sort of rental agreement with them to cover more of the basic expenses for keeping that building open. Lincoln Street is keeping the building on the property that is aimed to be a public safety building, keeping that building sort of operational. It's been used by the Hingham Police as a area for running drills of theirs. And I think actually I just heard from the custodian when we met last week that the building has been winterized. So at this point, it's not going to have too many expenses. Big decrease in the utilities requests for town hall comes mostly from the South Shore Emergency Group. Sorry, I've forgotten the full name, South Shore Regional Emergency Center. They now will be paying directly for the utilities needed by their 24/7 operation. Other than that, telephone has gone up as it has in many places. Vehicle fuel down a little bit, mostly because it turns out there are fewer trips being taken to the transfer station with trash from town hall, as it has been used a bit less. Lunchroom is not reopening, so there's no line item there for the budget. I think other than that, things, alarm costs are going up. The contract has increased. So that's the summary that I have. Michelle did, and Mr. Peasy, the head custodian, informed me that there is a grant in process to, through the Mass Green Communities, to get LED lighting for town hall, as well as for Hingham High School, sort of the two biggest electricity users in town buildings. So Michelle, do you want to run through your slide?
Thank you, Brenda. Good evening, everyone. I am joined by Jeff Peasy, the Town Hall Facilities Manager, and Horatio, aka Ray Hemmings, who is our Town Hall Maintenance Specialist. So they're here with us tonight. You guys all know, I think, this facility pretty well. We have now 3 full-time people and 2 part-time people on Jeff's team maintaining this building. It's more of a campus than just a single building. It's 137,000 square feet, and it was renovated in 1997 or 1998. So many, we've been replacing some of the systems and components periodically over time, but we still have a lot of heat pumps that date back to that time, and Jeff and Ray can speak a little bit more to that. As you know, it contains most of our town departments, the police station, the senior center, the recreation department, and some of their facilities, the central office for the school administration, and the regional 911 dispatch center that Brenda mentioned, Shrek, that serves Hingham, Hull, Cohasset, and Norwell. So at least 2 pieces of our facility are open 24/7, the police station and the 911 dispatch center, and that requires a lot of maintenance as well. Our team supports not just this building, but many other municipal facilities. The main ones are 308 Cushing Street, that's the old HMLP light plant, GAR Hall, 8 Short Street, which is the old DPW Tree and Park building that we currently lease to someone who has a furniture business on the first floor, 335 Lincoln Street, as Brenda mentioned, our newest acquisition that we hope to use for our public safety facility. The team also supports other public meetings and special events here, like Veterans Day, Memorial Day. We have different groups that rent out the auditorium, and then other public facilities as needed or requested. I think you already covered the request. You also mentioned the Green Communities grant that we're applying for, which would change out all of the lighting in Town Hall to LEDs, which hopefully will help that electric line go down in the future. As Brenda mentioned, the electricity line is the biggest change. Sue and I were talking about how to budget more consistently for this item. You see that it looks like the use has fluctuated a lot in the past, but that's just because we have applied different reimbursements from Shrek in the past. Sometimes we directly charge them for electricity. Sometimes we've applied part of their rent payment to that line. And we decided going forward, Sue looked at their average electrical use. And so we're basically taking out 275,000 kilowatt hours from our budgeted town hall kilowatt hour use going forward. So that's why you see that the reduction in that budget. We also looked at the natural gas line and tried to align it a little bit more with the actual therms that were used in the past. And then for some of the other utilities, we're level funding them so that the budget can catch up a little bit. But overall, the request, because of those changes, is down from FY22. And Jeff and Ray are here in case there's any questions or you want to go into more detail about any items.
Anyone have any questions for Michelle or Brenda or custodians?
Jeff and Ray also said that they will cut the heat to the AdCon meeting room if you don't approve this request when you return to in-person meetings.
Oh, the heat in my house is just fine right now. I don't know.
And Jeff and Ray won't get a paycheck if they cut my heat.
Good, it was always.
I'd like
too hot.
to, the one thing I would like to ask Mr. Peasy to describe is a fairly impressive program he has for keeping the heat pumps that have been keeping this building for some years going, including using parts from old ones. So Mr. Peasy, sort of explain how a custodian keeps things going.
Well, as we've replaced some of the heat pumps, it depends on what went wrong on them. We definitely scrap the control boards out of them. Whatever sensors, there's a lot that goes into a heat pump, but just because it failed for some other reason, doesn't mean the other parts aren't good. So I have definitely stripped those for parts and repurposed them quite a bit, actually. And it's bailed us out of some sticky situations as far as not having heat, but having the part right there and, getting it right up and running quick. So we try not to waste anything.
Appreciate it.
Yep, and Jeff, we have about 70 heat pumps in the building. We've replaced 29 or 30% to date. Typically through capital, we'll ask for 1, 2, or 3 per year to try to keep tackling the worst ones first, and occasionally do have to replace one on an emergency basis when it fails.
Yeah, we keep track of if we're accumulating a lot of service calls on certain heat pumps. I have it all noted, and then when it gets to a certain point, like I was saying, roughly 2/3 of the cost of a repair compared to a new one, we recommend changing them out.
Michelle, do you have a ballpark on what you would want this year for capital outlay for town hall?
Jeff's got all the quotes together. We just haven't sat down and kind of put together what the 23 request will be compared to out years. But we have talked about, besides sort of the usual items, certain things that never make it quite through the process of some carpet replacements. We have done hydration stations, some upgrades to bathrooms, but always heat pumps will be on there. Always sort of the perennial item of about $25,000 for just miscellaneous maintenance that comes up during the course of the year, since it is a large facility. But we've also looked at potentially repaving the parking lot, which is a bigger ticket item. And so we have to kind of talk about those things and put them on the schedule.
Actually, JR came out and he's relooking at that to give us an updated, price for that.
Yep, sounds good.
We also have one other big ticket item on there. I don't know if Jeff could speak to it. It involves the fire panel. And that's probably something that's definitely going to have to look into being replaced.
Yeah, that's an upgrade because they're phasing a lot of that equipment out. It's just like having a computer. It's 24 years old. So we have it's been ongoing. We started it 4 years ago. We did part of it. And now we probably have to start the second phase of changing out some of that equipment, those components. But that's capital. We'll be asking capital for that.
Anyone else have any questions?
Julie, I just wanted to say, apart from the work that they do, I think the maintenance staff at Town Hall just create such an incredible welcoming atmosphere for when we get to be in the building. And I just think we should note that, because that's a very nice, I don't know if they're as happy in their work as they appear, but they always seem to be smiling and welcoming. And that's really a wonderful gift to all of us. So,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, even on our old late nights in town hall, there wasn't too many grumblings about being there late at night with us as well. So we appreciate it. You know, I'm sitting in my uncomfortable at-home chair, and I'm missing the chairs that we have in the AdCom room right now, I have to say. So
Well, we definitely appreciate that, and thank you very much. You know, we strive to keep the building up and going, and making sure that everybody is here is feel very welcome and happy to be here.
yeah,
You guys do a great job.
you succeed.
Thank you.
I have a perennial question about 8 Short Street, about the question about who gets to pay for painting the building, but I'm not sure if we want to go into that right now, but it seems to be sort of the little ping pong, or the little, what do you call it? Batting back and forth between capital outlay and CPC. So,
That will definitely be a capital request this year.
okay. Andy, you have your hand raised?
Yes, I don't know if this is the proper group for this question, but what's the status of 101 Hersey Street? The old Public Works?
The old GPS. I don't know.
It's more a question, I think, for Randy, but we may have to look at some repairs in that building.
So that's still under the Randy's jurisdiction?
Yes.
And is it being used at all, do you know?
Yeah, I do think we were just there the other day looking at something. There's some supplies being stored out back, and I'm not sure what's in the building right now, but I think there's some repairs we need to do to the structure itself to make it safer.
Well, you folks do such a great job. I was gonna move it into your bailiwick, but
I don't know if Jeff wants any more buildings.
I'll do whatever they ask me to do.
Be careful, Jeff. You know, that's
I know, I just stepped in it.
Michelle,
new list in the morning.
One of my broken record questions also, Michelle, is about the consulting services to do an inventory of all the town buildings, town-owned buildings, and where we stand with that initiative.
Yes, we need to get that off the ground, the facility space analysis.
Yep.
And have them, I know we have money that was approved 1 or 2 town meetings ago now to do that study, and look at how all the facilities we have, all the programs and services that we offer, how we can fit those things better into the spaces that we do have. Yes.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions? Okay. So Brenda, do we have a recommendation?
I do recommend for the town hall FY23 budget, salary expenses of $268,460 and town hall expenses of $426,476.
Okay. Thank you. And sorry it's a late night for you guys, for all of you guys, but for Michelle and then Ray and Horatio. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Problem. Thank you. Nice to see you all.
Thank you all for coming.
Good evening.
Good night.
Night. Okay, so that's it for the budgets tonight. Thank you, everybody who took the time to go through the budgets for tonight. And so we just have, if possible, any liaison reports for Sustainable Budget Task Force. George?
Yeah, thanks, Julie. I don't really have much of an update from last week. The committee continues to meet. They are planning to meet over the next few weeks, although I guess some of the folks will be even more remote as they're zooming in from vacation places and that sort of thing. But the group is again have a lot of work to do, and they are diligently working at it. So
Okay. Anyone have any questions for George on that? All right, Dave, do you have anything for ACES?
Just quickly, that the superintendent interview process is underway. Folks may have seen notifications of that. I believe there were 2 candidates yesterday and 2 candidates today. And other than that, I don't think I have a lot new to add. We're still awaiting the school budget. So once we get that, we'll report back.
Okay. Thanks, Dave. All right, so just quick housekeeping.
Can I ask Dave a question?
Yeah, go ahead, Andy.
Is there a particular reason why the interim is not applying for the permanent superintendent position?
Andy, all I know, I actually think he was hired on kind of with the understanding that he would not, is my recollection. I don't know deeply the details as to why that may be the case, other than maybe Dr. Maestas, I think he had a consulting business that he came out of to be an interim to help us out. So
Oh, I see. Okay.
yeah, but no, it's a good question, and I don't think he ever intended to be, nor was he a candidate for the full-time job, is my understanding.
I
I
specifically
believe he was
asked him that
retired
question when we
from
were
the school
together.
systems, wasn't he, Dave?
Yeah, he was retired.
He was, right. He had a consulting,
Yeah.
kind of an education leadership consulting business, right?
I asked him that question point blank, Andy, when we had our meeting earlier this year, and he basically said what Dave just said, that he was only going to do it as an interim. He had no interest in long-term.
Okay.
you.
So under housekeeping items, our next meeting is January 4th, so we get a couple weeks off. And the budgets that we will try to tackle for that, I'll follow up with you all, but would be community planning, land use and development, veteran services, GAR hall, celebrations, South Shore Country Club, and hopefully we would be able to go back and revisit the sewer budget at that hearing. So does anyone have any questions about the budget process or our next meeting?
Where do we stand on budget books?
That is a really good question. I will ask that question at my weekly meeting when George and I have a weekly meeting with the town administrator team. So I will report back, but that's
They're partway done, Rob.
what's that?
They're partway done. We need a few more budgets before we can get them all in the books.
And Sue, I don't know if this is the right time to say this, but you can pull me off the list of having requested a physical book.
See, this is all part of my plan.
Since we already started,
The
Nancy.
school budget, I might want a full one.
One other question, Julie. I think originally it was the determination that we'd be remote through the end of December. Has that now been extended out for some period of time?
Yes, we don't have any return date set yet. And I don't know. I mean, I wish we could we're much better in person in terms of deliberation, that's for sure. But we're going to have to just keep plugging on virtually for, I don't know.
Yeah, that 6.4% positivity rate in the town keeps me wanting to stay home, I will say.
And other committees are not coming back either. We're not the only ones. There's
At some point recently, the only group I think that was meeting in person was the Board of Health, which was kind of interesting. I'll just leave it at that.
They have really fancy masks. Maybe that's what they.
And a very small number of people, but yes.
The retirement board is in person.
Okay. Well, yeah, there are 15 of us, and even if we went to the big room, yeah,
very tight quarters. So that's why it will be quite a while.
But the meet and greet with the prospective superintendent candidates is is live, right?
Yes, I think that they had 2 tonight and they have 2
Tonight
tomorrow
and
night.
2
So
tomorrow
if
night,
you want to check out 2 of them tomorrow night, I don't remember. We all got the email, but I don't remember which night was which candidate, but yes, you can go in person if you really want to go and get that town hall experience tomorrow night. Nancy, I don't know if you heard Sue say it, but for your budget book, you are going to get one because they already started the printing process. So sorry. You can use it as a footrest or something. Okay. All right. So matters not anticipated within 48 hours of meeting. Hearing none, could I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Second.
All right, by roll call vote, Bob,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Nancy,
You're
Nancy's
muted.
an aye.
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Evan had to leave. He had a work call with some people overseas, so he's not voting right now. Andy,
Aye.
Daveline,
Aye.
Brenda,
Aye.
Kristen,
Aye.
Tina,
Aye.
Aye.
Caitlin,
Aye.
Sarah.
Aye.